Hey everyone, it's Alexander the Real Mr. Robinson. So at long last, we are finally getting to see the sequel to Wonder Woman 1984. Granted, we are seeing it under abnormal circumstances in a time where things are really changing. But regardless, we're finally getting to see it, and in honor of Wonder Woman 1984, I thought I'd go ahead and take a look back at some other female-led superhero movies prior to 2017's Wonder Woman, because that movie completely shattered expectations and broke the curse of there being no good female-led superhero movies, and I think it's time we at least acknowledge what came before. I'm going to stay in the realm of DC movies, so if you were hoping for an Elektra review, then I'm sorry to disappoint you, but we're going to kick things off right now with my review of Supergirl, which came out in, funny enough, 1984. The movie stars Helen Slater in the lead role, and also stars Faye Dunaway and Peter O'Toole. Yeah, those are two actors that are in this movie, and is directed by Jeannot Szwarc, who also directed Jaws 2. Why is this the third connection that I've made to the Jaws series and the Superman series? That can't be a coincidence at all. But anyway, enough of that. Let's just focus on Supergirl. It came out in 1984, as I said beforehand, and takes place 1 year after the events of Superman 3, meaning that this movie is indeed canon with the Christopher Reeve movies. We start out in Argo City, where our main character, Kara Zor-El, lives, and Argo City pretty much contains any surviving Kryptonians after the disaster that was Krypton blowing up. Or, I'm sorry, as Marlon Brando calls it, Krypton. There's a device that powers this city called the Omega Hedron that is in the possession of Zaltar, who's played by Peter O'Toole. And I know Chris Stuckman made fun of that name, but honestly, that sounds like an appropriate Kryptonian name. So anyway, the Omega Hedron, for reasons that I'm not really sure how to describe, it gets blasted out into space, the city is left powerless, so Kara goes after it, heads to Earth, and suddenly becomes the hero known as Supergirl, without any sort of build-up at all. Unfortunately, the Omega Hedron lands in the hands of a witch named Selena, played by Faye Dunaway, and she plans to use it for world-dominating purposes. Like, really, her plan in this movie is probably a tad more stupid than Lex Luthor's real estate plan in the first Superman movie. And where is Superman, you may ask, since this movie technically is in continuity with those films? Well, he's off galaxies away on a peacekeeping mission and is unavailable. So pretty much he goes Captain Marvel like in Avengers Endgame, where he's just completely absent from the movie, except no, actually, she wasn't absent in Endgame. She popped up at the beginning and the end. Superman here is completely out of action. So I'd reviewed the other Superman movies leading up to the theatrical release of Justice League, and I made a point to skip over Supergirl because I wanted to focus more on the Superman movies themselves, and plus Supergirl does not appear in Justice League at all, although who knows, Zack Snyder's cramming so many things into his version of Justice League that maybe she could pop up in Zack Snyder's version, but who knows. Bottom line is, she wasn't in the theatrical version of Justice League, so I didn't think there was any purpose to cover Supergirl back in the day. And another reason I didn't cover this movie in 2017 was because I wasn't mentally ready to watch it. Like, I had sat through Superman 4 and Batman and Robin the same year, but I just wasn't quite ready to delve into Supergirl yet. But with Wonder Woman 1984 coming out, I realized there was no turning back from this movie and next week's movie. And Supergirl is... the best thing I can say about it is that I think it's far better than Superman 4. And that's saying a lot, because this movie is terrible, and that's not really a compliment to Supergirl as much as it's an insult to how bad Superman 4: The Quest for Peace is. And there are actually two other things in this movie that I think are, I don't want to say good, but competent. I'll say that. When Kara first lands on Earth and discovers her powers, that's actually a cool moment. It reminds me of in Man of Steel, where Kal-El realizes that he has these godlike powers, and when he tests his flying out. That's one of the few scenes I really liked in Man of Steel, and in Supergirl, it doesn't quite hold up to that same level, but it's a nice, jolly moment. It reminds me of Soarin' Over California, or I guess Soarin' Over the World at Disney's California Adventure, which, funny enough, speaking of that old attraction, Jerry Goldsmith did do the score for this movie. And that's probably the other best thing about the movie. Jerry Goldsmith's score is not memorable. It doesn't hold a candle to John Williams' Superman score, but it does get the job done. It feels appropriate for this universe. And funny enough, Jerry Goldsmith was actually the first composer that Richard Donner wanted for Superman before John Williams came in. And as much as I love Jerry Goldsmith, I don't think he could have done a better job than John Williams did, and maybe this score is kind of proof of that. And those are the only few things about the movie that I can say are competent. And one of those elements is just a pure backhanded compliment. Everything else about this movie is just, ooh boy, bad. Let me say this. Much like how Richard Donner's Superman kind of set the groundwork on how to make great comic book movies going forward, Supergirl does the complete opposite. Not only that, but it started the trend of terrible female-led superhero movies that wouldn't be broken until Wonder Woman came out. And the movie really feels like they're trying to recreate what Richard Donner did with the first Superman movie, except it's not as long and nowhere near as epic. One of the things that really worked and was unique about Richard Donner's Superman was that it was pretty much the Lawrence of Arabia of superhero movies, in the sense that it's this grand, sweeping epic, and this movie is just not. It's cheap, it's uneventful, it has some terrible, laughable special effects, even though I do have to admit the wire work on Supergirl is actually pretty good. And the acting in this movie ranges from boring to completely over the top. I mentioned Lawrence of Arabia. When I saw that Peter O'Toole was in this movie, I gasped because I was like, what? Peter O'Toole from Lawrence of Arabia is in this movie? Like, he must have read the script. He must have known that it was terrible. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it was one of those things where it's like, hey, he thought it could be great like the first Superman, so he just took it regardless. Because even though Superman 3 had just come out the year before, I mean, Superman 1 and 2 are fantastic movies, so I really can't blame him for coming on to this movie. But when I say it feels like they wanted to try to do what Richard Donner did with the first Superman movie, it really feels that way right down to the casting. Because think about it, Christopher Reeve was an unknown by the time Superman came out. And you had two well-respected actors in that movie as well. You had Marlon Brando and Gene Hackman in that movie. So in this movie, I feel like they just went, you know what, let's get a very well-respected actor to be the father figure, and let's get another star of Bonnie and Clyde to be the film's villain. I'm sure that'll work wonders. No, it doesn't. And Peter O'Toole in this movie is so over the top. I didn't live tweet this movie, but when I told people that I was watching Supergirl and I was shocked to see his name in the credits, somebody replied to that tweet saying, "Squirt." And then in parentheses they said, "Trust me, it's going to make sense sooner or later." And then we get to that scene where he and Supergirl are in the Phantom Zone, and Peter O'Toole's lines consist of, "Squirt, squirt, here, have a squirt. You sure you won't mind for a squirt?" And I'm just like, wow. Peter O'Toole from Lawrence of Arabia is almost embarrassing himself in Supergirl. But thankfully he's not in the movie as much. He's over the top, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't embarrass himself to the degree that Faye Dunaway embarrasses herself in this movie. Oh man, Faye Dunaway in this movie as the villain, which first of all, the fact that they made up another villain right after Superman 3 and before Superman 4 is kind of lazy, because you have this whole catalog of Kryptonian villains that either Superman or Supergirl could face, and you just made one up. Now, I do understand that eventually Selina made her way into the comics, but at the time, in 1984, this was a completely original character. And again, as I said before, her plan is just downright stupid. It's cliched, it makes no sense at all. And the dynamic between her and Kara just doesn't make any sense at all. One of the great things about the first Superman movie, even though Lex Luthor doesn't pop up until near the end of the movie, it's that rivalry between Kal-El's Superman and Lex Luthor, where Superman might be all-powerful and invincible and godlike, but he's not the brightest bulb in the room compared to Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor is the one that's got the brains and can easily outwit Superman. You never get that same type of hero-villain dynamic in this movie. Now, as for Helen Slater herself, she's not over the top in this movie, she's just bland. Her whole acting method in this movie is just to be wide-eyed and just look at everything with such wonder and innocence, almost like she's a child. Which admittedly, in the scene where she's discovering her powers and tests out her flying ability, I buy into it. But the rest of the movie, she's just so flat that she couldn't act her way out of a paper bag. And maybe it's the way she's directed more than anything, because Jeannot Szwarc, while I've grown to like Jaws too, he's not a great director. I mean, take a look at the actor in Jaws 2 that plays Mike Brody. He's terrible. And Helen Slater's terrible as well. She never once shows an ounce of charisma, and she doesn't even live up to the personality that Christopher Reeve brought to Superman. It's really sad more than anything. Not to mention the fact that Kara herself is just kind of an idiot. I mean, she's not unlikable or anything, but she's so wide-eyed and innocent that she's just dumb. During the film's first big action scene, where Selina uses her magic to terrorize a small town, I'd say Kara's just standing in the background watching for a good 4 minutes before she actually decides to do something and save people. And I'm just like, wow, this is our hero, people. Like, she just waits around until she realizes, oh, I've got these superpowers, maybe I should do something. And don't even get me started about her secret identity. She basically, I guess, has Skrull abilities to where she can just walk behind a tree and immediately transform not only her hair color, but her costume as well. And there's a scene, you've probably seen clips of it, where she's jumping out a window, and the camera is at a position where, like, it's showing both sides of the window. Like, the window is right here. This is the inside of the room. This is the outside of the room. Kara immediately goes through the window in her college uniform and then comes out in her Supergirl uniform. And because it's so instant and features no build-up at all, I laughed hard because it's ridiculous. And plus, you gotta love the fact that when she is in her disguise as Linda Lee, apparently it's not really a good disguise because some people can't tell the difference between Linda Lee and Kara Zor-El. Other people can realize that they're the same person. It's a total mess, and it just really comes down to a terrible script and not really caring. Like, if this movie really had gotten the love and care that the first Superman movie got, and even the second one, then maybe this wouldn't have gotten the horrible reception that it did, but they just really didn't care about this movie. They were just so focused on trying to make it like Superman that they just didn't include all the stuff that made the first two movies so great. Now, there's one thing in this movie that I actually do admire them for trying to do. They failed miserably, but I can at least admire them for doing it. It's the idea of trying to connect this to the actual Superman movies. Because think about it, this movie was once again produced by the Salkinds, who produced the first 3 Superman movies. And when it came to Superman 1 and 2, their original idea was to film both of them back to back. But we all know that that didn't really work out, because Richard Donner was fired from Superman 2 after he filmed most of that movie and was replaced by Richard Lester. But they were pretty ambitious to try to film 2 movies back to back in an unproven genre at the time. So with Supergirl, they decided, hey, why don't we try to make this spin-off actually legit? Let's connect it to the Superman movies. We'll have a Superman poster in the dorm room that Linda Lee is living in with the sister of Lois Lane, Lucy Lane. We can't get Christopher Reeve to make a cameo, but we'll bring in Marc McClure as Jimmy Olsen. And if this movie had worked, then it may have been the start to an actual DC cinematic universe. It would have predated Marvel by 24 years, and maybe the Salkins could have gotten the rights to Batman. By the time we got to Batman and Robin and George Clooney says, "This is why Superman works alone," that would have meant more because, oh, Superman and Batman coexist in the same universe. That's awesome. But no, it didn't work at all. The attempts to connect Supergirl with the first 3 Superman movies, it just absolutely fails. And this movie did so poorly that the Salkins eventually sold the Superman rights to the Cannon Group, and thus we got Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. Oh, man. Yeah, this movie sucks. Again, I like it better than Superman 4: The Quest for Peace. I think I might like Superman 3 a little more, but not by a whole lot because that movie's still terrible as well. And obviously it can't touch the first 2 Superman movies. So it's terrible. It's terrible. Don't waste your money at all. If you want a laugh out of it, then it could be enjoyed on that level. And even if not, the only other reason to really watch this movie is kind of as a time capsule to how these movies were at the time. Superman and Superman 2 were the only comic book movies in existence. Everyone tried to cash in on it, but just really failed at it. And Supergirl really is a weird look into how bad these movies could have been, and how little the people making this movie actually cared about the property. So it's a fascinating movie. Probably is worth seeing just out of curiosity, but as a movie itself, don't waste your money. And there you go, that's my review for Supergirl. Now next week I'm going to be reviewing the second other terrible female-led DC movie, Catwoman, which I've never seen before, but apparently people have said that in comparison to Supergirl, Catwoman is even worse. So I'm scared. I'm scared to see this, but I'm going to see it as soon as I get off this review. I'm not mentally ready for this, but now I want to know what you guys think about Supergirl. If you've seen it, what did you think? Whatever the case may be, let me know in the comments below. And until next time, I hope you enjoyed this review. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, leave a comment, support my Patreon page, follow me on social media, and until then, this is the real Mr. Robinson telling you there's only one